For over 40 years, the entire world was basically holding its breath. Two superpowers, armed to the teeth with weapons that could literally destroy the planet, were locked in a conflict that was anything but cold for the millions of people caught in the middle. So today, we're going to break down the mechanics of this global rivalry, this high-stakes chess match of ideology and power that really did shape the world we're all living in right now.
So where does this all start? Well, you can almost trace it back to a single powerful image. In 1946, Winston Churchill stood up and gave a name to what everyone was feeling: this Iron Curtain. It wasn't just a border on a map. It was this stark, almost overnight division of the world into two totally hostile camps. And that really set the stage for everything that was to come.
And look, this division, it went deep. It wasn't just about territory. It was a fundamental clash of ideas, of two completely different visions for how human society should even work. At the very heart of it all were two opposing systems, and each one was absolutely convinced it was the only right way forward for humanity. Okay, so what did this conflict really boil down to? On one hand, you had the US model of capitalism, private ownership, individual freedom to make your own economic choices. On the other hand, you had the Soviet communist model. The government owns everything and it's all distributed to the people. And here's the crucial part. Neither side thought their system was just, an option. Each one saw its ideology as a universal truth that absolutely had to be spread across the entire globe. And that suspicion? Oh, it went both ways, and it was deep. From the Soviet point of view, American money and power wasn't about freedom. It was just a new, slicker kind of empire. They saw US dollars flowing into other countries not as help, but as a form of infiltration, a quiet takeover that would lead to exactly what their ambassador called it: world domination. So, with the world split down the middle, and a direct head-to-head war being pretty much unthinkable, a new kind of conflict had to begin. This was a game of influence, of proxy wars and political pressure. Both sides had to get creative and develop these complex strategies to grow their power without blowing up the planet. For the United States, their grand strategy, their whole playbook, was something called containment. The idea, dreamed up by a diplomat named George Kennan, wasn't about invading the Soviet Union or trying to tear down communism where it already was. Nope. The goal was simpler. Build a wall around it. Patiently but firmly block it from spreading anywhere else. And this right here, this shows you the two mindsets perfectly. Take the Marshall Plan, this huge American aid package to rebuild Europe after the war. In the American story, it's this heroic lifeline saving a continent. But if you look at the Soviet propaganda, you see a totally different picture. To them, that same aid is a weapon, an American bludgeon meant to smash other countries' independence and force them into America's economic orbit. Same action, two completely opposite worlds. But hanging over every single move, every political debate, every little crisis was this terrifying new reality that changed everything about war forever: the atomic bomb. This wasn't just another weapon. It was a shadow that fell over all of humanity. Just think about this number for a second. At their peak, the US and the USSR had stockpiled more than 60,000 nuclear warheads combined. That's enough to destroy the world many, many times over. This stops being about military advantage. It became a race toward total annihilation. This insane reality led to a really strange, paradoxical kind of peace. It was called mutual assured destruction, or, fittingly, MAD. The logic was just brutally simple. If either side pushed the button, the other side would fire back before the first missiles even hit. There wouldn't be a winner. There would only be ruin. And that dark, twisted logic is honestly what kept the Cold War from turning hot. So you can actually see this progression, right? From the absolute shock of the atomic age dawning in 1945 to the world's first kind of desperate attempts to get it under control. These treaties like the Test Ban Treaty and the Non-Proliferation Treaty were really just baby steps, early attempts to try and put the nuclear genie back in the bottle, or at least stop it from getting out to anyone else. But then, in October of 1962, all that abstract fear, it suddenly became very, very real. For 13 days, the world stood on the absolute brink of apocalypse. So how did it start? With a pretty routine spy plane flight over Cuba. Except the photos it brought back were anything but routine. They showed that the Soviets were secretly building nuclear missile sites just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. Missiles that could hit almost any major city in the US in minutes.
And from there, things just escalated with terrifying speed. First, the discovery. Then, Kennedy's team frantically debates what to do. They decide on a naval quarantine, basically a blockade, to stop more missiles from coming in. The tension just skyrockets. The U.S. military goes to DEFCON 2. That is the last step before all-out nuclear war. The entire world just held its breath until finally, through secret deals and back-channel messages, they found a way to pull back.
And you can just feel the raw fear in this message from the Soviet Premier Khrushchev to President Kennedy, right at the peak of the crisis. This image he uses of two men pulling on a rope, desperately trying to untie a knot before it strangles everybody, it is just a chilling reminder of how unbelievably close we came. But here's the thing. While these two superpowers were locked in this terrifying chess match, staring each other down, their rigid, two-sided worldview created these huge blind spots. By being so focused on each other, they both failed to see other massive forces that were reshaping the planet.
Listen to this. This is just a jaw-dropping admission from the longtime Soviet ambassador to the U.S. He's saying that the rise of political Islam, of fundamentalism, it just wasn't on their radar at all. It didn't fit their neat little ideological boxes. So the top Soviet leadership, the Politburo, never even talked about it.
So, of course, when the Iranian Revolution exploded in 1979 and overthrew a major U.S. ally, both Washington and Moscow just completely misunderstood it. They tried to jam this incredibly complex event into their simple capitalist versus communist box. They saw it as just another anti-Western uprising, and they totally missed that it was being driven by a powerful religious ideology that didn't care about capitalism or communism. And that really leaves us with a huge question, one that's just as relevant today. The Cold War forced pretty much every conflict into this simple, two-sided struggle. But as the Iranian Revolution showed, the world is obviously way more complicated than that. So it makes you wonder, when the big powers are only focused on each other, what are the real game-changing threats that they're missing? What's the thing they don't see coming until it's already too late?